What would you do if you found the wallet of a billionaire stuffed with cash, black cards, even the key to his penthouse, knowing no one would ever know if you kept it? For most, the temptation would whisper louder than conscience. But when Jasmine Okafor, a young woman in thrifted clothes and weary sneakers, stumbled across Cameron Blake's wallet, she returned it untouched. No hesitation, no hidden agenda. And when he tried to drown her honesty in money, she gave him words instead. Some things you shouldn't sell, like your soul. That sentence shook his empire more than any loss. If you believe love is stronger than greed and integrity outshines gold, this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe for more tales that stir the soul, and share with someone who needs proof that redemption is always possible, no matter the cost. My name is Cameron Blake, and I was taught to treat achievement like oxygen. I grew up in houses with more rooms than relatives, where affection arrived as quarterly bonuses, conditional, delayed, itemized. My father closed deals the way surgeons close incisions, precise, cold, certain the pain was a necessary cost. My mother curated rooms and silences. I learned early that tenderness is leverage, and leverage is victory. At school, I bought allies with favors and outworked anyone who refused the transaction. By 32, I'd tripled the family fortune, acquired companies like trophies, and trained myself to distrust any feeling I couldn't monetize. Smiles became tools, apologies, strategies. I measured worth in valuations and headlines. Nights were louder than days. Champagne, glass cities, the applause of clever men. Then I'd lie awake, staring at the dim ceiling of a penthouse that sounded like a museum. Guarded, echoing, immaculate. Empty? I carry a particular superstition. A solid black wallet, commissioned the year I first outbid my father. He shook my hand, as if I were a competitor who'd finally become useful. I kept the wallet close like a totem, a small god of control. If it stayed in my pocket, nothing could be taken from me. Losing it would mean the world could reach inside. There were women, beautiful and brilliant, but I treated intimacy like a merger. Diligence, terms, exit strategy. I told myself honesty required clarity. Really? I just feared being known without advantage. I compensated with generosity that always had a signature attached. Mine. I donated, but only where my name could be etched in metal. If you ask my board, they'll say I'm efficient, visionary, relentless. If you ask my house staff, they'll say I'm punctual and distant. The man who forgets birthdays but remembers stock splits. If you ask me on the rare nights I admit it, I'll say I am a man who has mistaken power for safety for far too long, whose life looks complete from a balcony and threadbare from the inside. I have everything, and yet I wake each morning bargaining with the loneliness I engineered myself. It happened on a Tuesday, the cruelest day for illusions. After a fundraiser that had mistaken opulence for purpose, I strode to the curb, half listening to congratulations, wholly committed to indifference. Somewhere between the revolving door and the town car, the small god of my confidence, the solid black wallet, slipped from me like a truth I didn't want to face. By morning, anxiety had calcified into efficiency. I canceled my trainer, barked at my assistant, froze the cards, phoned building security. Power hates waiting rooms. I occupied mine with orders. Then the front desk called. "Sir, there's a woman here. She says she found your wallet." She stood in the lobby like a lighthouse in thrifted denim and scuffed white sneakers, exhausted and unafraid. Jasmine Okafor. She had taken 2 buses across town because the first guard at midnight said, "Come back during business hours." She did. The wallet was intact. Cash crisp, black card mute, penthouse keycard shining like temptation that had learned her name and failed. "Take a reward," I said, producing cash like an apology I could respect. She shook her head. "Some things you shouldn't sell, like your soul." It wasn't a sermon. It was inventory. She asked for a simple receipt proving she'd returned it, in case someone asks. Practical, clean, invulnerable. I signed, hand unsteady. What complicates this moment is not only her integrity, but the mirror it held up. Jasmine's eyes carried stories of night shifts and bus schedules, of a grandmother who needed medicine, and a community clinic that made miracles from scarcity. Mine carried mergers and exit clauses. We were both efficient. Only one of us was free. I watched her leave without checking the time. The elevator closed on my reflection, and for once, I didn't recognize the man inside. Not anymore, yet. I told myself it was gratitude. The reason I couldn't stop thinking about Jasmine. Gratitude is respectable. Obsession is not. But gratitude does not reroute a CEO's calendar, and obsession does. I found reasons to pass the lobby at odd hours, to linger near the concierge desk, to ask questions that sounded like security concerns and felt like curiosity with a tie on. I did what powerful men do when the unknown unnerves them. I ordered a discreet background check. It read like an audit of resilience. Nursing prerequisites at a community college. Overnight shifts as a home health aide. A grandmother named Mama Abeli who'd raised her. Blood pressure high, humor higher. Rent always on time, no priors. A social trail of church bake sales and clinic fundraisers, nothing loud with complaint. My investigator concluded, low risk. My heart concluded, dangerous to indifference. I tried my usual tactics because habits dress as instincts. Flowers arrived at her apartment. She rerouted them to the clinic's waiting room. A car idled after her shift. She thanked the driver, waved the bus down, and paid in singles. I offered a donation large enough to name a wing after me. Jasmine sent a handwritten note. We prefer many names on the wall. Community is plural. The check cleared anyway, stripped of branding, as if money behaved better without my name attached. Proximity became instruction. I visited the clinic, ostensibly for due diligence. Fluorescent lights hummed, chairs mismatched. Hope did not. She moved through the space like choreography, warming blankets, translating insurance into human, laughing with a teenager afraid of a diagnosis. She hummed soft gospel under her breath, not to display piety, but to pace herself. When she finally noticed me, her smile was professional and unpurchased. You shouldn't be here during intake, she said. People deserve privacy. Then I'll wait, I answered, an unfamiliar sentence in my mouth. Outside, a man argued with a landlord over an eviction notice. The city had sold a block to developers. My firm owned a slice. His pharmacy stood in the footprint slated for demolition. Jasmine stepped between them with the quiet authority of someone who doesn't mistake volume for strength. At headquarters, the board pressed for a lucrative acquisition, a chain of clinics that billed hard and paid staff lean. Synergies, they said. Vertical integration. I'd coined crueler phrases. But I saw Jasmine's waiting room in the slide deck's blind spots. I told myself to regain equilibrium. I asked Jasmine to dinner at a small restaurant with lighting designed to forgive sins. She declined without cruelty. I don't date my benefactors, she said, and you're not mine. The sentence was scalpel clean. Frustration calcified into theater. I had a piano delivered to the clinic's multi-purpose room, a polished monument to generosity. She arranged to auction it, funding vaccines and bus passes instead. My staff laughed, then stopped when I didn't. I started learning the names of the night janitors, the favorite snacks of the receptionists. On a stormy Thursday, the clinic received a 48-hour eviction notice. I could halt it with a call. I did, and made sure the newspapers heard. Flashbulbs returned. Jasmine thanked the community, the lawyers, the volunteers. She thanked me last, equal among many. The applause felt like static. Leverage is not love, she said afterward, calm as ever. And help isn't help if it holds a leash. Later, alone, I opened the black wallet and found it heavy with something I couldn't spend, the desire to be worthy without price tags. The feeling didn't obey me. It asked me to obey it. The night I mistook power for intimacy began with a closing bell and ended with a funeral for my pride. We'd sealed a brutal deal, the kind that fattens charts and hollows neighborhoods. Champagne scaled my throat like applause. Music throbbed on the rooftop, a crown of light over the city we'd conquered on paper. Colleagues slapped my back, cameras winked. I laughed on command. Anyway, Jasmine arrived because I'd asked, no, insisted, on hearing her concerns in person. She crossed the terrace in a simple dress, hair pinned up like she had things to do than impress a skyline. She spoke quietly, carrying the ledger of consequences I refused to read. The pharmacy families, the night shift nurses, the patients whose buses ran later than hope. You can still amend the terms, she said. You can still choose people. Alcohol edits memory into a script where you are right. I leaned on that script. Choose me, I said lightly, meaning choose my world. Choose the side. Choose the man who can make problems evaporate. She didn't flinch. I'm not a side, she answered. I'm a person. Laughter nipped the edges of my vision, investors mistaking human dignity for banter. Pride surged, terrified of appearing weak in temple it built. I stepped closer, wind making my jacket billow like a cape I didn't deserve. Kiss me like you mean it, I said, staging a moment that would reassert gravity. Me as center, her as orbit. The music faded in my head. In the sudden quiet, I saw us, not as I wished, but as we were. A man drunk on approval, trying to purchase tenderness with spectacle. Jasmine looked at me the way storms look at ships, without malice, but with truth. I feel sorry for you, she said. 7 words, no volume. Demolition. The terrace didn't gasp. It exhaled boredom and turned back to deals. Only I fell. I felt the scaffolding of my persona wobble. The pillars labeled winner and untouchable crack, under a pressure I couldn't refinance. Shame. Security shifted. A partner smirked. Someone muttered, "She'll come around." She didn't. She stepped back, gave me space to choose a different story, then left, through ordinary doors, into an ordinary night, where people earn respect rather than demand it. In the bathroom mirror, under lights that flatter no one, I met my reflection as if for the first time. My bow tie drooped like a confession. Lipstick stained my collar from a congratulatory embrace I couldn't remember consenting to. I washed my face, expecting relief. It didn't arrive. What arrived was a terrible clarity. I had used philanthropy as perfume, romance as leverage, help as leash. What I wanted from Jasmine wasn't love. It was absolution without repentance. Back on the terrace, the city roared. I stood still, an emperor overhearing the rumor that clothes exist for reasons beyond ceremony. For the first time in years, I left my own party early, and no one noticed until the elevator doors already held my fading shape. I rode the elevator into a hush I hadn't earned. In the penthouse, the city glittered like a promise with small print. Water, not whiskey. Ice sank like a ruined strategy. I feel sorry for you, replayed without music, impossible to debate. I pressed a towel to my eyes, as if I could staunch a wound no one could see, and admitted it had revealed me. On my desk waited a walnut box of conquest. Commemorative pens, deal coins, a cufflink from my first hostile takeover. When I slid the box to the floor, the thud was heavier than wood. Sleep refused me. At 3 a.m., I opened the clinic letters my assistant had filed, stories I'd funded and never read. A teenager thanked a nurse who waited past closing so an insurer's call wouldn't be missed. A father wrote that the pharmacy clerk remembered his daughter's allergy and spared them another ambulance. A grandmother praised the lady who hums for steadying her breath. Ordinary sentences with extraordinary weight. By dawn, the windows felt indecent. I changed, took the service elevator, and walked until the city smelled like bread and diesel. Outside the pharmacy, my deal endangered. A line already formed. A man handed numbers from a pen on a string. No one recognized me. Anonymity felt like oxygen. I counted faces like ledger lines and heard every digit insist on being a name. Quiet became counsel. First repair, the pharmacy. I called our general counsel and demanded alternatives to demolition. Humane isn't a legal term, he said. Find synonyms judges respect, I answered. We uncovered a delay mechanism, a relocation fund, and a leaseback clause I had buried as leverage and now needed as mercy. A trap door can become a bridge. Then my staff. I gathered department heads and refused euphemism. We're expert at winning and amateur at being good, I said. I raised the wage floor for hourly employees and created profit sharing tied to community impact, not just margins. Is this a phase? Someone asked. It's a beginning, I said. Apologies had to be verbs. I visited the night janitors with coffee and names learned. I wrote to partners whose trust I had treated like a renewable resource and asked what repair required. I called my mother and let silence be a hallway. She said my father feared being small more than being wrong. For the first time, I admitted I understood. I drafted a message to Jasmine 6 times and deleted 6 drafts. Asking for attention felt like another transaction. Instead, I returned to the clinic on Saturday with a notebook and the willingness to be sent away. Intake gets slammed before lunch, a volunteer said. Jasmine saw me down the hall. No smile, no scowl, just assessment, and pointed to a stack of forms. Start there. Spanish on the left, English on the right. Ask if you're unsure. I did. I learned that dignity lives in small, repetitive acts. Pronouncing a name carefully, fetching water without ceremony, listening to a story that doesn't advance your plot. Midway through the shift, an elderly woman squeezed my hand and called me kind. I looked for someone else she might mean. Later, I brewed tea the way they taught me, and carried a cup to the room where the humming came from. Thank you for not leaving the mess for someone poorer to clean, Jasmine said, eyes on a chart. It wasn't forgiveness, just proof that repentance can be measured before it's believed. I nodded, a man beginning to practice the mathematics of less. I went home quieter than before tonight. Change didn't arrive as a fanfare. It arrived as routines I had once outsourced. I woke earlier than the skyline, studied equitable care instead of market gossip, and circled sentences that made profit a guest rather than a god. My assistants learned a new pace, fewer emergencies created by my impatience, more meetings with community partners who asked better questions than consultants. The board called this image work. I called it practice. At the clinic, I signed in like anyone else, wore the paper badge that curls at the edges, and took a seat at a plastic table with forms I was still learning to love. I stopped speaking first. It is astonishing how much control hides in the speed of a conversation. I slowed down until listening felt like labor. And then, finally, like relief. Jasmine noticed because the mess no longer waited for other hands. When a shipment arrived short, I did not delegate outrage. I called, documented, escalated, and apologized to the nurse with a quiet, "We will bridge the gap." She nodded, still careful with her approval, and handed me thermometer sleeves. Then help us count. We talked in the overflow room, where chairs scrape and secrets become sentences. A teenager had cried through a blood draw and left shaking. Jasmine looked tired in the heroic way of someone who kept being necessary. She told me Mama Emily's blood pressure had steadied on a new medication, though the copay still stung. She studied at night between shifts, anatomy terms taped to cabinet doors. "I want to be a nurse practitioner," she said. I said, "I want to be someone my father wouldn't recognize." At headquarters, the pivot became a map. I created a community investment arm with voting seats reserved for patients and staff from partnered clinics. We reviewed supply chains for predatory contracts and replaced them with vendors whose margins did not depend on scarcity. Legal groaned, PR spun. Finance squinted at spreadsheets that suddenly told human stories. The stock dipped. Instead of a gala, we hosted an open forum at the community center. Folding chairs, coffee and cardboard. Everyone got a microphone. A pharmacist explained why a 10-minute delay in delivery can become a night in the ER. A single mother sketched the math of childcare against a shift schedule. A janitor asked why benefits treat dependents like luxuries. I took notes, not positions, and promised changes with dates people could circle. Humility kept costing less than pride. I walked to work when I could, the city's noises stitching me to a place instead of lifting me above it. I answered emails with thank you before noted. I asked for pronouns and offered mine. I learned to stock a break room so it says, "I see you at 2 a.m. Jasmine," and I found a rhythm that wasn't a negotiation. Some mornings we shared quiet minutes, repacking exam rooms, trading headlines about our days like postcards from neighboring towns. Some evenings, after closing, we coaxed small plants to live in the garden, laughter replacing exhaustion for a breath or two. I did not reach for her hand, because I wanted the friendship to be strong enough to refuse me. Trust appeared as permission. She asked me to drive Mama Ebeli to an appointment when a home aide canceled. I waited in the lobby reading pamphlets about hypertension until the nurse called her name. On the ride home, Mama Ebeli told stories about market days in Abba and how mangoes taste sweeter when you forgive someone before eating. "You carry too many receipts," she said, tapping my chest. "Throw them away." We argued, too, the honest way. When a supplier threatened to pull out over our new terms, I considered capitulating. "You can't ask the clinic to swallow that shortage," Jasmine said. "Find another partner." I did, and learned the boring heroism of decent contracts. One Sunday, she brought me to church. I expected theater. I found a room that sang. She did not perform piety. She participated. I stood there, a man who had memorized quarterly hymns, hearing a different math of value. Afterward, she handed me watery coffee and said, "You don't have to be impressive to be included." I believed her, at least for the length of a hymn. I began writing promises on index cards and tucked them in the black wallet. Do no harm in deals. Ask who pays when I win. Name people. Share power. Some days I kept them. Some days I failed and tried again. Jasmine never praised me for bare minimums, never punished me for effort. She held a steady mirror and let me decide how to stand in it. At work, I practiced transparency that hurt. We published a dashboard showing labor standards, pay equity, and community outcomes. We tied executive bonuses to that score. A director resigned on principle, meaning profit. Others stayed and learned to speak in first names instead of segments. It was slower. It was better. One evening, under clinic fluorescence that do beauty no favors, Jasmine studied me and saw I wasn't reaching for purchase anymore. "You seem honest," she said, then added, "Stay that way." It wasn't a reward. It was a doorway. I stepped through, grateful the hinges did not creak. The threat arrived as a calendar invite titled Strategic Continuity. That's board speak for consent to what you used to be. In the glass room, charts rose like battlements. "The pivot has cost shareholder value," the chair began. A motion slid across the table. Reinstate the acquisition pipeline. Sell the community fund. Resume aggressive consolidation. They called it fiduciary duty. I heard worship of the old god. I asked for an hour and walked instead. Vendors folded tarps. Kids chased the last light. The pharmacy we'd saved was open. A clerk remembered a name without checking a screen. In the clinic garden, Rosemary believed in concrete. The hour wasn't about numbers. It was whether I'd be expensive to keep. Back upstairs, I said, "We can make more money by hurting people faster, or enough money by helping people slower. If you need the first, fire me. If you want the second, vote no, and give me 12 months. Silence. 3 hands rose against me. 4 hovered. 2 watched the ticker as if prophecy flickers. I added, I've pledged my personal stake to a trust that pays only if our social outcomes improve. If I fail, I lose more than I could gain by lying. The motion failed by 1 vote. Not victory, oxygen. I finalized the trust and texted Jasmine. Garden tonight? She answered with a thumbs up, proof over performance. I arrived early with work gloves and a wooden box. The evening smelled like damp soil and tomatoes pretending to be sweet. Jasmine came through the clinic door in a sweatshirt and soft jeans. She looked like the opposite of spectacle. She looked like rest. I thought you'd be celebrating, she said. I am, just not loudly. We walked between basil and stubborn mint. I told her about the vote, the trust, the 12 months that might be a gift, or a sentence. Failure means people hurt, she said. Yes, that's why applause can't be the metric anymore. I set the box on our old argument bench. Inside lay the black wallet, emptied of authority, its compartments stuffed with index cards, the promises I'd been practicing. I read them. Do no harm in deals. Ask who pays when I win. Name people. Share power. Choose the slower good. Apologize with verbs. Protect the tired first. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. There's one more thing, I said. A fund accountable to neighborhoods. Majority community board. Transparent books. Profits capped. Reinvestment automatic. Help me structure it so it isn't a monument to me. If it's real, I'll advise, she said. If it becomes branding, I'll blow the whistle. I'm counting on that. We planted 2 small trees that night, gestures that cast shade in summers we might never see. Dirt worked beneath my nails, ruining my executive manicure, fixing nothing and starting something. Why the box? She asked. I'm done with talismans. I want reminders. Her smile arrived unguarded and left quickly. Good. The grand gesture refused choreography. A week later, we amended our bylaws, living wages across subsidiaries, ethical acquisition screens, executive compensation tied to community outcomes with independent verification. I signed at a folding table in the community center. No step and repeat, no branded pens. We served grocery store sheet cake. Analysts downgraded us. A rival texted, enjoy the halo while you sink. I muted my phone and learned to assemble care packages with clinic volunteers. A nurse showed me how to tape gauze so skin doesn't tear later. Humility is a muscle. Painful, then strong. Months were measured by outcomes. Fewer missed shifts because childcare stipends landed. Pharmacy lines thinning. Night staff taking real vacations. The stock stopped falling and began to hum. Lower, steadier, like a heart that chose rest over adrenaline. Board meetings lost brinkmanship and found agendas. One evening, under the little trees, I slid out a final card I hadn't dared to write. Love without price. My hands shook, not from fear of rejection, but from respect for her freedom. I don't want to buy anything from you, I said. Not your time, not your yes, not your forgiveness. I just want permission to keep showing up as the man I'm becoming. Beside you, if you'll have me. Elsewhere, if you won't. You waited, she said. And you changed when no one was watching. I had to be someone I could watch, I said. She took my hand, not as prize or proof, but as participation. I'm not promising forever tonight, she said. I'm promising honest days. That's more than I ever earned. We didn't kiss. No violins cued. We sat beneath new shade while streetlights blinked awake, and the city sounded less like machinery, more like choir. Somewhere, an ambulance threaded the evening. A reminder the work never ends. Later that week, Mama Ebele blessed the trees with water from a chipped kettle, calling them patients who drink sunlight. We laughed, softly, and I felt the old armor loosen like buttons after a long dinner. And I understood the grand gesture was never the box. The charter, the trust, or the boardroom speech. It was the daily decision to love without price and lead without harm, one unprofitable promise at a time. Love is not an equation of wealth against need. It is a decision repeated in quiet hours, in small gestures, in the choice to build rather than consume. Cameron Blake once believed power could purchase absolution, but Jasmine taught him that integrity cannot be bought, only lived. Their story is not about a wallet returned intact. It is about a soul returned to its owner. In every deal he now signs, in every hand he shakes, Cameron remembers the night he was told, "I feel sorry for you," and how those words cracked open the man he thought he had to be. And here is where you come in. If this story reminded you that change is possible, that love grows stronger than greed, then share it. Tap like, subscribe, and pass it forward. Somewhere, someone else needs proof that redemption is worth choosing today.